With the release of Shredder's Revenge in the last week, I thought it'd be quite fun to take the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and venomize them. So let's bring these illustrations to life. Even though there's a world-changing battle taking place, and news crews were reporting about the incident all over the world, there was one place that was oblivious to the events unfolding. Beneath the streets of New York, a band of brothers with a rather unusual father had just returned from battling in Dimension X against Krang and Shredder. These two mortal enemies of our heroes had managed to escape through a dimensional portal and were most likely somewhere on Earth. However, before they escaped, our heroes managed to stop their giant mobile fortress, the Technodrome, along with a large army of foot and rock soldiers, from coming through and taking over the city. You're probably wondering who our heroes are. Well, they're a group of 4 brothers who have been training in the ninja arts almost all of their life. The only thing is, though, these brothers are turtles. That's right, they're Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and their origin story is a bit of a long one. Well, in short, they're exposed to a chemical compound from this company called TGRI years ago. It was a mutagenic compound, and it changed and altered their forms to be more human-like in appearance. It was at the same time that the Turtles returned that April O'Neil from Channel 6 News, one of the few humans who knew about their existence, showed up in the lair and asked the guys if they had any idea about what was going on. She mentioned that she was going to go with Channel 6 News, and if she can get there in time, report live from the scene. The first turtle to speak to April was Leonardo, or Leo for short. He was the eldest brother and the leader of the team. April, what's going on in the desert? We just got back from dealing with Shredder and Krang in Dimension X. This is the first we're hearing about this. April turned on the TV to one of the news channels reporting the coverage. The Turtles looked in amazement at the footage of this epic climactic battle going on. Mikey, who as usual wasn't really paying much attention, turned to the TV and blurted out, "Awesome, what's this? Some kind of monster movie?" Everyone turned and looked at Mikey, and Raph, while shaking his head, said, "Does it look like a monster movie, you knucklehead?" With a completely vacant look on his face, Mikey turned to Raph and said, "Well, yeah." The next thing Mikey knew, a ton of empty pizza boxes were getting thrown at him. Leo shook his head and turned back to April and asked her what was going on. After discussing the scenes on the TV of the battle between the Autobots and Decepticons, everyone was in shock when they saw giant sea creatures appear out of thin air and start battling it out in the middle of a lake that had suddenly formed. April set off for the Channel 6 newscopter, saying that she'll catch up with the guys later, ignoring their warnings that it could be dangerous. Leo wanted to find Master Splinter, their father. He wanted to ask some advice on the decision if they should follow April or take part in this battle that seems that it could, sooner or later, reach their home. Raphael thought they should follow April and wanted to storm off after her. But Leo wanted to make the decision with Master Splinter. Raph's short temper and lack of patience were starting to get to him, and he stormed off, mumbling to himself, as he bumped into Donatello on the way out. Leo knew how Raph felt. He too wanted to go after April and make sure she was okay. However, this decision was too big for him to make alone. You see, the Turtles had spent years and years learning the ninja arts, and one of the key things they were taught was to stay hidden and not show themselves in public. There were very few people within New York who knew about their existence, and this decision was far too big to make on his own. Leo headed to try and find Splinter, but it was odd. Splinter was not in his room, and he rarely left the lair, let alone the sewers. Leo looked around to see if there were any clues as to where Splinter had gone, but he couldn't see any in his room, so he went to the training area. While in the training area, Leo saw what looked like a black ooze-like substance in a corner. He went over to have a closer look, and he thought he saw it move, but he couldn't tell if it was a trick of the light. "Hey guys, do you see this?" Leo looked around and no one was there. He remembered that Raph had gone to cool down somewhere in the sewers, and Donnie and Mikey were watching the battle unfold on the news, interested in those events. Leo turned back around, and as his gaze met with the black-like ooze, it launched at him. Several tendrils then shot out and stuck to his chest and the rest of his body. It started to engulf and envelop him. Bit by bit, it travelled up his arms, Leo tried to fight back before letting out a scream that echoed throughout the lair. In a matter of moments, he was completely engulfed by this black ooze. After a few more moments, the ooze began to form into a more solid creature. He started to look a bit more like Slash, however, more creepy and scarier. It was at this point Donatello and Raphael came charging in after hearing the scream from Leo. They were met by a strange creature-like version of Leonardo, stood there with his swords drawn. The first to enter the room was Donatello. He stopped mid-dash in shock. Leo, is that you? The strange creature replied. We are Venom. What? Venom? Hey, Donnie, what was that? Was that Leo? I think so, but I've no idea what's happened to him. If we can capture him, maybe I can study him and find a way to change him back. Raph and Donatello looked at each other and drew their weapons. As they looked back at Leo, he launched at them. Raph blocked the swords using his size, and Donnie used his staff to knock the venomized version of Leo back across the room. Yuck, what is this stuff? It's on my staff! At that moment, Donatello looked and realized that the black ooze-like substance left on the staff was slowly trying to make its way up closer and closer to him. Watch out for that black stuff. It seems to be sentient. You mean that thing's alive? What the shell? Hey Donnie, any ideas? We need to restrain it. It looks like the ooze that's flowing is alive. Don't let it touch you. We don't know what will happen. Raph and Donatello continued to fight with Leo, but it was a standoff. After a few minutes of fighting, Donatello and Raphael were getting more and more exhausted, while Leo didn't seem tired at all. Hey Donnie, you got any ideas? At this rate, we're not going to be able to restrain him. It was at that point Raphael made a decision. He decided, in order to restrain Leonardo, he would throw his size at him and cause him to dodge them. As Leonardo jumped to the side out the way, Raphael grabbed him from behind to hold him and restrain him. Raph, what are you doing? Just knock him out now. I can't hold him much longer. With that, Donatello jumped up in the air and swung his bow staff down as hard as he can, hitting Leo square bang in the center of his head. Leo fell down unconscious, started to change back to his regular form. Hey Raph, we did it! Raph? It was at this point Donatello looked over to where Raph had been and noticed standing where Raph was a completely venomized version. Raph had also become infected. Stood in front of him is the now venomized form of Raphael, with long red tendrils coming out the top of his head and spikes on his shell. Donatello looked back at Leonardo, who was still unconscious for a second, and said, "Oh, shell." With Leo unconscious and Raph now venomized, Donatello was already feeling exhausted. He could only think that he had to get out of there and get out of there quick. Find Mikey for help and see what they can do. Donatello made a quick exit, and as he was running away, he glanced back to see what was happening. He saw a couple of tendrils shoot out from Raphael and pick up the size before Raphael knelt down and helped Leonardo up. It would appear that Leonardo was only knocked out for a few moments after being hit on the head extremely hard. This meant Donatello needed to figure out some way to restrain not only Leo, but Raph as well, before he can find a way to try and save his brothers. Donnie headed towards where Mikey was last seen, in front of the TV where the news events were unfolding. As he got closer to where the TV was, Donnie realised that the creatures looked rather similar to the infected Leo and Raph. He was sure this wasn't a coincidence. As he was figuring things out in his head, he decided to make a run for his lab while shouting out for Mikey. Mikey! Mikey was nowhere to be found. Where is he? Of all the times for him to do a disappearing act, Donatello only had one choice. He headed to his lab in the hopes of finding or putting something together that could help him restrain his brothers Leo and Raph, who, at this point, were trashing the lair. They were going from room to room following Donatello, tendrils flying, knocking things over, and pretty much destroying the place. Raph and Leo's tendrils opened the fridge and left a bit of symbiote on a pizza slice that had been left in there, and then they shut the fridge afterwards before continuing to trash the living room. As they passed the TV and saw the other venomized creatures on the news, they looked at each other and said, "We should make this fast. We are needed with the others. Yes, we should join the others as soon as we can, for we are Venom." Donatello was trying to put something together that could work to restrain the now venomized Leo and Raph. And he found a prototype sonic grenade he'd been working on. He was hoping he could use it as a distraction before firing a net from the net launcher he was just putting together to try and restrain his brothers. He didn't have to wait long. As he finished loading the net launcher, Raph and Leo entered the lab. Donatello threw the stun grenade, which made a few beeping sounds and had a few flashing lights, before it suddenly went quiet. Raph and Leo looked at each other with a smile on face before looking back at Donatello. They thought that the grenade was a dud. It was that moment that the grenade activated and sent out a sonic pulse, which caused pain to Leo and Raph in their venomized forms, causing them to curl over and scream out in agony. Donatello took the chance to fire the net launcher, covering the pair seconds before the grenade stopped its sonic pulse. So at this point, a tendril fired out and hit Donnie in the chest as his hands were full with the net launcher. Before he could do anything, the tendril started to shoot other tendrils out on his body. However, something strange happened. A couple of tendrils shot out and got a device from inside the lab, pulling it onto it and merging it in with the arm. Moments later, Donatello joined his brothers as the latest venomized turtle. The only one left now was Mikey. While all of this was going on, Mikey, also known as Michelangelo, had decided, even though it was fun watching the events on the news unfold in this monster movie, as he called it, he was getting hungry, and true to his nature, he wanted some pizza. He made a call for the pizza to be delivered. He decided it would be fun to do some sewer boarding on his way to get his favourite food. Luckily for Mikey, he left moments before Leo let out a loud scream. At this point, Mikey was so far away from the lair, he didn't hear it echoing. Completely oblivious to the events going on with his brothers, Mikey was thinking of how cool it was seeing giant robots and creatures battling it out on the news, as well as some magic happening. He started to daydream while he was boarding, imagining he had magical powers like he had just seen, and he was making stances and shouting out spells like Abracapizza as he was riding a skateboard. He was thinking how cool it would be if he could make pizza appear out of thin air. It wasn't too long before Mikey reached the delivery point, and he collected the pizzas. On his way back, he couldn't help being true to his nature of scarfing down a couple of slices as he sewer boarded his way back to the lair. Completely carefree, he got back to the lair and shouted, "Hey guys, I've got some pizza, come and get it!" But it was silent. Guys? No one's here. Oh well, more for me then. Mikey strolled into the lair and thought it looked a bit of a mess, not thinking too much of it. He wondered what had happened, but he was more interested in getting back to the TV and watching the news, or as he liked to call it, the monster movie. He jumped on the sofa and began to scarf down some more slices of pizza as he was getting more and more engrossed with the events happening in the desert. As time passed, he noticed that the rest of his brothers still weren't about. He wondered where they could have gone to. It was not like them to be gone for so long. He decided to look about the lair and see if he could find them, or his father, Master Splinter. He couldn't see any sign of his brothers or Splinter. Mikey was beginning to get worried at this point, as there was no signs of the rest of his family. And the more he looked, the more he realised that the lair had actually been trashed and wasn't just looking a mess. It was at this point Mikey decided to try and search for the rest of his brothers. He got the remaining pizza and went to put it in the fridge. He headed towards the fridge and he opened it, putting the boxes in without paying too much attention. As he went to close the fridge, the tendril that was in there shot out at him and started to wrap around him. Mikey, in pure surprise, fell to the floor and started screaming, "Ah! It's eating me! It's eating me!" Moments later, the venomized form of Mikey stood up. 2 tendrils shot out, picking up a couple of pizza slices. He looked across to the TV, and it was at that moment he realised he had to go to where the battle was. He had a feeling his brothers were also heading to the battle. I grew up on the 80s cartoon, and I think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the first film I ever watched in the cinema. It's the first film I ever remember watching. I think all the designs came out amazing this time. Which one's your favourite? My favourite turtle is Donatello, and I quite like the pose I put him in. But it's hard to choose which turtle looks the best. I wanted to keep a nice concurrent theme, keep them all similar in a sense, and I think they came out really well. Let me know in the comments which one's your favourite. If you want to have a laugh and watch me die several times as Donatello, I had a go on Shredder's Revenge, which came out last week on Koi Fish Gaming's channel. I'll put a link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out the other Venomization videos on the channel? I've got Venomizing Ben 10 Aliens, we've got more of the Multiverse story arc, including the original one, Soundwave vs. Venom, which will bring you all the way up to date. Anyway, that's all we got time for today. I'm John Dempsey, this is DempseyJ Illustrations. Stay safe, everybody, and I'll catch you next time.